I stood at the head table, champagne glass halfway to my lips, when my father tapped his knife against crystal and said the words that would destroy him. To my son Benjamin, who finally found a woman desperate enough. 72 people went silent. Not the awkward kind of silence. The kind where you can hear someone's napkin drop 4 tables away. My fiancée Sarah's hand froze on her fork. I felt her body tense beside me, saw her start to stand, but I touched her wrist. Gentle. Firm. "I've got this," I whispered. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I walked to the front of that ballroom, opened my laptop, and put one file on the projector screen. My father's business partner of 17 years, Marcus Chun, dropped his scotch glass. It exploded against the marble floor. That sound was the sound of my father's entire empire cracking open. But this story doesn't start at the rehearsal dinner. It starts 4 months earlier, the night I found something in my father's financial records that I was never meant to see. I'm Benjamin Gold, 31 years old, and I'm a forensic accountant for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Before you skip ahead, stop right here. 8 million people have watched stories like this in the past month alone, and 63% say it changed how they deal with toxic family members. Drop your city and time zone in the comments. Tell me if you've ever had to choose between protecting family and exposing the truth. Now let me take you back to December, the night my father called me a failure for the last time. My father, Victor Gold, built his commercial real estate empire from a single duplex and a handshake loan in 1987. By the time I was born in 1994, Gold and Chun Properties owned 47 buildings across 3 states, employed 200 people, and had a reputation that made city council members return his calls within the hour. I grew up watching developers and politicians treat him like royalty. The man who closed the waterfront deal that transformed downtown. The philanthropist whose name was on the children's hospital wing. The guy who bought entire tables at charity galas and made sure the press photographed him writing the check. At home, though, Victor Gold ran a different operation. My father never hit me. He was too smart for that. Too calculated. Victor Gold destroyed people with precision, with words delivered at exactly the right volume to make you question your own worth without him ever raising his voice. I was 7 the first time I remember it clearly. 2nd grade. I brought home a math test, 96%, red star at the top, teacher's note saying I showed exceptional problem-solving skills. I put it on the kitchen table like I was presenting evidence of my existence. He looked at it for maybe 3 seconds. 4% wrong means you missed something important, Benjamin. Smart kids don't miss the important parts. My mother, Jennifer, sat right there with her coffee and her morning paper. She turned the page. Said nothing. That was the system in our house. He cut. She watched. I bled in private. Here's what makes this kind of childhood so confusing. And this is the part people who didn't grow up like this never understand. My father wasn't cruel every single day. When I was 10, he taught me to change a tire in our driveway. When I finally got the lug nuts tight without stripping the threads, he said, "That's my boy." That's exactly right. I held on to those 4 words for years. Replayed them when things got bad. Used them as evidence that somewhere underneath everything, he actually cared. It wasn't until I was in my 20s that I realized he'd said it in front of Marcus Chun and his family, who were over for a Sunday barbecue. I'd performed correctly. He was taking credit. That was the only version of pride Victor Gold ever displayed. The kind with witnesses. The pattern didn't change as I got older. It just evolved, became more sophisticated. College graduation. I finished summa cum laude from Georgetown, double major in accounting and finance. Already had a job offer from a Big 4 firm before I walked across that stage. My hands shook when they called my name. My parents came. My father wore his best Tom Ford suit. At dinner afterward, a steakhouse near campus that cost more than my monthly rent, he spent an hour telling my college friends about his latest acquisition, a historic building downtown he'd converted into luxury condos. An hour. My friends kept glancing at me. I kept smiling. The waiter brought the check. My father picked it up, looked at it, then looked at me. "Well, Benjamin, let's hope that degree earns back what it cost me." Everyone laughed because that's what you do when Victor Gold makes a joke. You laugh, even when your stomach twists, even when you want to flip the table. 2 years later, I got recruited by the FBI. Financial Crimes Unit. Competitive position. Less than 3% acceptance rate. I called my parents to tell them. My mother said congratulations. My father got on the extension. FBI salary, huh? Hope you're okay living in a studio apartment for the next decade. I laughed. I said, thanks, Dad. I hung up. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot for 30 minutes staring at the steering wheel. You know what the worst part is? I thought it was normal. When you swim in poison long enough, you forget what clean water tastes like. You think everyone's family works like this. You think this is just how fathers show love. It wasn't until Sarah that someone finally held up a mirror. We were on our fourth date. I told what I thought was a funny story about my father giving a speech at my cousin's wedding where he joked that I'd be next if any woman could tolerate my schedule. Sarah didn't laugh. She set down her wine glass and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Ben, that's not normal. You know that, right? I didn't answer. But something cracked that night. Something small. Something that would eventually split wide open. I met Sarah Chun, Marcus's daughter, at a financial crimes conference in Chicago. She was presenting on anti-money laundering compliance for commercial real estate. I was 3 rows back taking notes. She wasn't flashy, didn't command attention the way my father did. Sarah was the kind of person who made every word count, who listened more than she talked, who could dismantle a bad argument without raising her voice. Steady, grounded, the exact opposite of everything I'd grown up around. We dated for 16 months before I proposed. Before that, I brought her home exactly 3 times. I should have known how the third visit would go. My father opened the door, shook her hand, and within 5 minutes had turned our living room into an interrogation. Where did she go to school? What was her career trajectory? Was she close with her father? Sarah answered everything calmly. No defensiveness. No performance. Just honest, direct answers. Then my father leaned back in his leather chair, the one positioned so it caught the light from the window just right, and said, Benjamin's career keeps him busy, Sarah. I hope you're prepared for a lot of lonely nights. The room went cold. My mother studied her fingernails. I started to say something, but Sarah beat me to it. With respect, Mr. Gold, Ben's career is one of the things I admire most about him. He's doing important work. No aggression. No heat. Just fact. My father stared at her for 5 full seconds. Then he smiled. The smile that never reached his eyes. Well, Marcus raised a loyal one. He stood up and went to the bar cart. Subject changed. But I saw it. The micro-adjustment in his posture. The slight tightness in his jaw. Sarah wasn't afraid of him. And that, I understand now, was unacceptable. Because Victor Gold's entire system depended on everyone in the room maintaining just enough fear to stay in line. Sarah didn't have that fear, which made her dangerous. I proposed on a Saturday morning in our apartment. No restaurant. No crowd. I made coffee, sat across from her at our small kitchen table, and said, I want to spend the rest of my life having mornings exactly like this. Will you marry me? She said yes before I finished the question. We wanted something small for the rehearsal dinner. 20 people. Close friends. A private room at a restaurant we both loved. Simple. My father had different plans. He called 2 days after I told him we were engaged. I'm handling the rehearsal dinner, Benjamin. Already booked the grand ballroom at the Riverside. The Riverside? The venue where he hosted his annual investor galas. Valet parking, crystal chandeliers, a projection system he used for PowerPoint presentations about quarterly earnings. Dad, we don't need all that. Sarah and I were thinking something low-key. Low-key. He laughed. His actual laugh. My son's wedding and you want pizza in someone's basement? I'm paying. Let me do this right. I looked at Sarah. She shook her head slightly. Then my mother called. Her voice had that practiced softness she used when she was running interference. Just let him do this, Benjamin. He's trying to be supportive. So I folded. The way I'd been folding for 31 years. The way my mother had taught me to fold. Within a week, the guest list exploded to 72. I scrolled through the names. His investment partners. His commercial real estate contacts. His country club golf foursome. People whose names I recognized from his company's holiday cards. My actual friends? 11 total. This wasn't my rehearsal dinner. It was his stage. And I'd handed him the microphone without putting up a fight. I didn't know yet that he'd been writing his toast for 2 weeks. I didn't know what he'd written wasn't a blessing. It was a grenade. The night before the dinner, Sarah and I were in bed, lights off, both staring at the ceiling. This is your dinner, she said quietly. Not his. You can still change it. If I push back now, he'll make the next 6 months unbearable. You don't know what he's like when he's angry. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she rolled toward me. Okay, but Ben, At some point, you're going to have to decide where the line is. She kissed my forehead and turned off her lamp. I lay there thinking about something my mother told me when I was 19. Just her and me, cleaning up after Thanksgiving dinner. She said early in her marriage, maybe year 3, she'd pushed back against my father about something. She wouldn't say what. His response was to cancel all her credit cards. Not temporarily, permanently. She had to ask him for grocery money for 6 months until he decided she'd learned her lesson. She told me this while loading the dishwasher, smiling like it was a quirky anecdote about how relationships work. She never pushed back again. Not once in 33 years. That night, lying next to Sarah, I finally understood what that story really was. Not a memory. A warning. My mother was showing me the price of resistance and the cost of compliance. I looked at the dark ceiling and thought, if I don't draw the line now, I will become her. Smiling through the damage. Loading the dishwasher. Telling my own kids the same story someday, like it's just how life works. I couldn't sleep after that. The next evening, Friday, the night before the rehearsal dinner, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off the seating arrangements. My father was in his home office, door open, reading glasses on, writing something on a legal pad. "Dad, what are you working on?" He didn't look up. "My toast. Don't worry about it. Can I see it?" Now he looked up, smiled. The smile that meant I'd crossed a line. "You'll hear it tomorrow with everyone else." Something cold moved through my chest. "Dad, it's my rehearsal dinner. I think I should know what you're planning to say." "Benjamin." His voice dropped half an octave. The warning tone. The one that meant stop talking now. "Trust me, everyone's going to remember this toast." My mother appeared in the doorway with tea. She read the room instantly. She was always good at that. "Your father gives wonderful speeches, honey. Remember when he spoke at the hospital fundraiser?" I remembered. He'd spent 20 minutes talking about his own donations before mentioning the sick kids. That was Victor Gold's gift. He could make everything about himself and convince you it was generosity. I left without another word. Grabbed my messenger bag from the car. I had a case file I needed to review over the weekend. Budget analysis for a fraud investigation closing Monday. Sarah had suggested I bring my laptop to the dinner. "You can work during setup. Send the report before we sit down." Practical advice. Made sense. That laptop would end up being the most important thing I brought to that ballroom. But neither of us knew it yet. Saturday morning. Day of the rehearsal dinner. I was drinking coffee, reviewing the guest list, when the event coordinator sent the final seating chart. My father had made last-minute additions. I opened the file. 72 names. I started counting. His golf foursome. The Hendersons from the country club. 3 couples from his real estate investment group. The Kramers, his insurance brokers. A developer he'd met 6 months ago. 6 months, and the man was at my rehearsal dinner. Marcus and Evelyn Chun. Table 1. Front and center. Right next to family. My college friends, my FBI colleagues. Table 9. Near the kitchen entrance. I call my father. "Dad, where are my people?" "James, Michael, the guys from the unit?" "They're in the back." There wasn't room up front, Benjamin. I had to prioritize. Prioritize who? "Your golf buddies." His voice sharpened. "This is a networking opportunity, not a college reunion. Don't be selfish." I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. From the old, familiar feeling of being rearranged by someone who thinks he owns every room he walks into. Sarah was watching from across the kitchen. Her jaw was tight. "He invited Marcus to table 1, I said. "Front row. Right next to us." Sarah leaned against the counter. "You know why?" I looked at her. "He's performing," she said. "For Marcus. For all of them. The successful father. The perfect family. He's putting you on display like a trophy he built." I stared at the seating chart on my screen. 72 names, and I was a prop at my own dinner. I closed the laptop, got dressed, and drove to the venue to watch my father's show. I arrived at the Riverside an hour early to check the setup. The venue was exactly the kind of place Victor Gold loved. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. Gold fixtures everywhere. A projection screen at the front already set up for the slideshow my father had created. Family photos he'd selected. Moments he'd curated. A highlight reel of a family that existed only in photographs. I was adjusting place cards at table 4 when I heard his voice. Coming from the hallway near the coat check. My father and Marcus Chun, both holding drinks, talking low. I was around the corner. They couldn't see me. "I'm telling you, Marcus, I couldn't be prouder of Benjamin." My father's voice. Warm. Expansive. The voice he used for investors. He's everything I raised him to be. Marcus laughed. You've done an incredible job, Victor. Not every father stays this involved. Family first, Marcus. That's always been my philosophy. I stood there behind the wall, champagne flute forgotten in my hand. Proud. My father had just said he was proud of me. He had never, in 31 years, said that word to my face. Not at graduation. Not when I got my CPA. Not when the FBI recruited me. Not once. But here, in a hallway, to the man whose company funds he'd been stealing for 8 years, there it was. Proud. The word wasn't for me. It was currency, spent where it would buy him something. I set the glass down and walked away quietly. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I just filed it where I file everything my father gives me. In the place where pain sits so long you forget it doesn't belong there. What I didn't know yet was this. Marcus Chun, the man standing there laughing, had been quietly losing $700,000 to the man he was toasting. And I had the proof on my laptop in my car. Let me back up. 4 months before the rehearsal dinner, I was working late at the FBI field office, deep in a financial fraud investigation involving a commercial real estate firm. Standard case. Wire transfers, shell companies, the usual layers of paperwork designed to obscure the money trail. I was tracing a series of payments through an LLC registered in Delaware when something caught my attention. The LLC had no web presence, no employees on record, no public filings beyond bare minimum compliance. But the wire transfers moving through it were substantial, consistent, monthly. I kept pulling the thread. The LLC connected to a holding company. The holding company shared a registered agent with another entity. And that entity, buried 4 layers deep behind enough corporate structure to make your eyes cross, linked back to a name I recognized. Gold and Chun Properties, LLC. My father's company. I stared at my screen. My coffee went cold. The office was empty. Everyone had gone home hours ago. The cleaning crew was vacuuming down the hall. My training kicked in before my emotions could. FBI financial investigators have an obligation. When we uncover evidence of potential fraud during the course of our work, even tangential to a case, we don't get to look away. It's not optional. It's the oath. But this was my father. I saved the files, closed my laptop, drove home. Sat in my car in the parking garage for 15 minutes. Engine off. Hands on the wheel. Then I went inside, opened a new folder on my personal laptop, and named it Project Atlas. Over the next several months, I worked on it after hours. Alone. Tracing every transaction. Documenting every discrepancy. Building the kind of report I build for federal prosecutors. Except this time, the subject was the man who raised me. I told no one. Not yet. 3 weeks in, I told Sarah. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I was waking up at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, running numbers in my head, second-guessing every entry in that file. The federal agent in me knew what the data showed. The son in me kept looking for another explanation. There wasn't one. I sat her down at our kitchen table on a Tuesday night. Showed her the summary. She read it slowly. The way lawyers read everything. Once for content. Once for implications. When she finished, she looked up. How much? Hard to say without full access to the company books. But based on what I can trace, significant. Possibly over 700,000. Across 8 years. She set the pages down carefully. What are you going to do? I don't know. He's my father. Sarah nodded. She didn't push. Didn't lecture. Didn't say what any reasonable person would have said, which is your father is a criminal. Instead, she leaned forward and said the thing that actually mattered. He's also stealing from a man who trusts him. Marcus has been his partner for 17 years. I looked at the table. The grain in the wood. The coffee ring I'd left earlier. Whatever you decide, Sarah said, I'm with you. But don't sit on this too long. Marcus deserves to know. I agreed. My plan was straightforward. Finish the audit. Compile the full report. Get through the rehearsal dinner and the wedding. Then the following Monday, I'd send the report directly to Marcus. Face to face if possible. Clean. Professional. No drama. Just the truth. Delivered the way I deliver evidence to prosecutors. Bring the laptop to the dinner, Sarah said a few days later. You have that case deadline Monday anyway. Practical suggestion. Made sense. My father, of course, had his own plans for that evening. And they changed everything. Saturday evening. 6:45. The riverside looked like a magazine spread. Candles on every table. White rose arrangements. A jazz quartet playing something smooth near the bar. My father had outdone himself. That was the thing about Victor Gold. When he performed flawlessly. Sarah and I arrived together. She was wearing a navy dress that made her look like she belonged in a different, better version of my life. I was in my best suit, the one I wore to federal court. My father met us in the lobby, already working the room, scotch in hand, smile ready. There he is. He opened his arms wide. There's my boy. He hugged me, held it for 4 full seconds. His cologne was overwhelming. Expensive. My body went rigid. My father never called me his boy. Not at my college graduation. Not when I got the FBI job. Not in 31 years. But here, in front of arriving guests, in front of Marcus and Evelyn Chun handing their coats to the attendant, I was suddenly his boy. I hugged him back, because what else do you do? Marcus shook my hand warmly. Congratulations, Ben. Your father's been talking about this dinner for weeks. Thanks, Mr. Chun. I'm glad you're here. And I meant it, though not in the way he thought. Sarah squeezed my hand as we walked to our table. I leaned close and whispered, he's performing. She whispered back, I know. Just breathe. I looked around the ballroom. 72 faces. Candles flickering. Wine pouring. My father moving table to table like a politician working a fundraiser. Shaking hands. Clapping shoulders. Laughing that big Victor Gold laugh that made everyone else feel like they were part of something. This was his night. Not mine. Not yet. Dinner was served at 7:30. My father had arranged the seating, so he was at the head of table 1. Marcus and Evelyn to his right. My mother to his left. Sarah and me directly across. Like we were on trial. The food was excellent. The wine was expensive. And my father was in rare form. Somewhere between the salad and the main course, he started telling stories. Not about Sarah and me. About me. The greatest hits of Benjamin's failures, repackaged as comedy. Did I ever tell you about the time Benjamin tried to fix the sink in his first apartment? He held his glass up, flooded 3 units below him. 3. Laughter rippled across the table. And his cooking. God. The cooking. He once set off the fire alarm making toast. Toast. More laughter. Then he leaned in, conspiratorial, like he was sharing insider information. And his first girlfriend. What was her name, Ben? Rachel? She lasted about 5 months before she figured out he was married to his work. The table laughed. My mother laughed. People who'd never met me laughed. Because my father had that gift. The gift of making cruelty sound like love. I smiled. The automatic smile. The one I'd been practicing since I was 7. Sarah didn't smile. Her hand found mine under the table. Across the table, Evelyn Chun tilted her head slightly. She leaned toward my mother and said softly, but not softly enough, Victor's being a bit hard on him tonight, isn't he? My mother's response came instantly, reflexively, the way trained responses always do. Oh, that's just how he shows love. Evelyn looked at me. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't say anything else, but I could see it. Recognition. The quiet alarm of a woman who knows exactly what she's watching. She told Sarah later, I knew right then. I just didn't know how bad it was about to get. 8:45. Dessert plates cleared. The jazz quartet went silent. My father stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket, picked up a spoon, tapped it against his glass 3 times. The ballroom quieted in that practiced way people quiet for a man they've learned to listen to. I want to raise a glass, he said, scanning the room with that showman's gaze, to my son Benjamin. I straightened in my chair. My heart did something stupid. It hoped. Even after everything, after 31 years of evidence to the contrary, some broken part of me still leaned toward the light. Maybe this time. For 31 years, he said, voice carrying to the back tables, I've watched this boy struggle. The word landed like a stone. Struggle. I could feel 72 pairs of eyes shifting toward me. With school, with work, with every relationship that didn't quite work out. My face went hot. A few uncomfortable laughs from the back. Glasses held midair. Then he raised his glass, smiled his biggest smile, and delivered the line he'd been writing for 2 weeks. So tonight, I want to toast to Benjamin, who finally found a woman desperate enough. He laughed. A big, generous Victor Gold laugh. No one joined him. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. 72 people frozen. Forks down. Eyes wide. A woman at table 5 covered her mouth. Marcus Chun stared at his plate. Evelyn's hand went to her husband's arm. Sarah's whole body tensed beside me. I felt her start to rise. I put my hand on her arm. Gentle. Firm. I've got this, I whispered. The silence held. A few people at the far tables raised their glasses out of pure discomfort. Muscle memory overriding judgment. Most didn't. James, my partner from the FBI unit, set his glass down deliberately. He shook his head once. Slow. Helen, Sarah's mother, turned and looked directly at my mother. The expression on her face wasn't anger. It was disbelief. My mother looked away. My father stood there, glass still raised, reading the room. He was smart enough to feel the temperature drop. But Victor Gold had never backed down from a room in his life. So he doubled down. Oh, come on, he said, grin widening. It's a joke. Benjamin knows I'm proud of him. He turned to me, eyes bright with manufactured warmth. Right, son? 72 people looked at me. I looked at my father. 6 seconds passed. 6 seconds is an eternity when no one's breathing. Then I said it. Quiet. Clear. Sit down, Dad. His grin faltered. Just a crack. Benjamin, don't be dramatic. I said sit down. My voice didn't rise. I didn't need it to. The ballroom was so silent a whisper would have carried to the valet stand. My father stared at me. For one terrible, electric second, I thought he was going to argue. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, searching for an ally, a laugh, anyone, and found nothing. Just 72 faces watching him like witnesses. He sat down. It was the first time in my entire life that my father did what I told him to do. I pushed my chair back, stood up, smoothed my tie, and walked, calm, steady, no rush, to the front of the ballroom. I had a laptop in my bag, and a file that had been waiting for this moment without either of us knowing it. The walk from table 1 to the front of that ballroom was maybe 40 feet. It felt like a mile. I could feel every set of eyes tracking me. The rustle of fabric, someone clearing their throat, a chair creaking as someone shifted to see better. My laptop bag was under the AV table near the projection screen. I'd left it there during setup, planning to review my case file during cocktail hour. I hadn't needed it then. I needed it now. I unzipped the bag, opened the laptop. My hands were steady. My heart was not. My father's voice came from behind me. Sharp. Benjamin, what are you doing? I didn't turn around. I plugged the HDMI cable into the projector. The same projector my father had set up for his curated family slideshow. Photos he'd chosen. Vacations he'd staged. A highlight reel of a life that never existed. The screen lit up. I opened the folder. Project Atlas. Then I turned to face the room. 72 people. My mother gripping her napkin. Sarah standing now, 5 steps behind me. Marcus Chun at table 1. His reading glasses still on from reviewing the dessert menu. My father just told 72 people that no woman would willingly marry me, I said. My voice was even. Professional. The same tone I use when I present findings in federal court. I think it's only fair that these same 72 people know who my father really is. I clicked the file open. The first page filled the screen. White background. Black text. A header that read, Forensic Audit Summary. Unauthorized Fund Transfers. Gold and Chin Properties, LLC. Marcus Chin's Scotch glass began to tilt in his hand. I didn't give a speech. I didn't need to. This is a forensic audit report I compiled over the past 4 months, I said. It documents a pattern of unauthorized fund transfers from the company my father co-owns with Mr. Marcus Chun. I scrolled to the summary page. 3 columns. Dates. Amounts. Destination accounts. 8 years of transactions laid out in the clean, clinical format I'd been trained to produce. The numbers spoke for themselves. My father shot to his feet. His chair scraped the floor with a sound that made 3 people flinch. This is ridiculous. His voice was loud now, louder than he ever allowed it to be in public. The controlled exterior cracking to show what lived underneath. You don't know what you're talking about. I turned and looked at him directly. For the first time in 31 years, I looked at my father without flinching. Dad, I'm a federal agent with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. This is literally what I do. The room didn't gasp. It was worse than that. It just absorbed. 72 people processing at once. I could see it moving across the tables like weather. Widened eyes. Hands reaching for phones. Couples leaning together to whisper. Then the sound. Glass on marble. Sharp. Final. Marcus Chin's Scotch glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Evelyn grabbed her husband's arm. Marcus. Marcus didn't look at her. He was staring at the screen. His face had gone gray. The kind of gray that comes when you're watching 17 years of trust dissolve in 17 seconds. Then he looked at my father. And the expression on Marcus Chen's face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was the look of a man discovering his house has been on fire for years and nobody told him. My father moved fast. He always did when the walls closed in. He stepped toward Marcus, both palms up, the peacemaker's pose. Marcus, listen to me. He's lying. He's angry. I made a joke he didn't like, and now he's making things up to humiliate me. Marcus raised one hand. Didn't stand. Didn't shout. Just one hand. Palm out. The way you stop traffic. Don't. One word. But his voice shook. And that single tremor carried more weight than anything my father had said all night. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone. He dialed right there at table 1, in front of 72 witnesses. His voice was low but clear enough for nearby tables to hear. David, it's Marcus. I need you in the office Monday morning. First thing. It's about the partnership. He hung up, set the phone on the table, didn't look at my father again. Victor spun toward my mother, his composure cracking now, visibly, in real time, like ice under weight. Jennifer, tell them he's lost his mind. Tell them. My mother sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the table. Her eyes were on her plate. She said nothing. The same silence she'd given me for 31 years. She finally gave it to him. And for the first time, her silence wasn't protection. It was permission. Chairs began scraping. Guests at the far tables stood quietly, reaching for coats and purses. No dramatic exits. Just the slow, unmistakable withdrawal of people who no longer wanted to be in the room. Sarah stepped up beside me. She didn't say anything, just placed her hand gently on my back. Then a voice came from table 3. Helen, Sarah's mother, stood up. She walked over to me, took both my hands in hers, and said, I'm proud of you, Ben. 4 words. The exact 4 words I'd been waiting to hear from my father my entire life. They came from someone else's mother. And somehow that made them mean more. Marcus stood up slowly. He steadied himself with one hand on the table. Not because he was weak, because he was holding himself together. He walked to my father. The 2 men stood face to face in front of 72. No, maybe 60 now. Some had already slipped out. Witnesses. 17 years, Victor. Marcus's voice was quiet, controlled. The voice of a man choosing his words because he knows a room full of people will remember everyone. 17 years I trusted you. My father started talking fast. Marcus, let me explain. There's context here. The transfers were, it's restructuring. My accountant advised, your son is a federal agent. Victor, Marcus said. And he just showed me what your accountant was hiding. My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus adjusted his jacket, straightened his tie. Then he said quietly and precisely, my attorney will be in touch Monday morning. Don't call me. Don't come to the office. Don't contact me. He turned to Evelyn. She was already standing, coat over her arm. Ready. They'd been married 38 years. She knew when it was time to go. But Evelyn stopped. She walked to me, took my hand, squeezed it. Thank you for telling the truth, Ben. I know what it cost you. I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. The Chins walked out through the double doors. The room watched them go. No one tried to stop them. No one said goodbye to Victor. My father stood alone in the center of the ballroom. The projector was still glowing behind him, casting the audit summary across his back like a shadow he couldn't shake. One by one, tables emptied. Coats collected. Cars started in the parking lot. Not a single person stopped to shake his hand on the way out. By 9:30, the ballroom was nearly empty. The jazz quartet had packed up 30 minutes ago. The wait staff moved silently between tables, clearing plates from a dinner no one had finished. My mother sat at table 1. Same seat. Same posture. She hadn't moved in an hour. My father stood by the bar. Jacket off. Tie loose. Holding a glass of scotch he hadn't touched. I closed my laptop. Unplugged the HDMI cable. Slid the laptop into my bag. My hands were trembling now. Not during. After. The adrenaline leaving. What it left behind was something heavier. I walked to the center of the ballroom. My father looked at me. His eyes were red. I don't know if it was rage or something deeper. Maybe both. You just destroyed your own father, he said. I held his gaze. No, Dad. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped covering for you. Over a joke? You did this over a joke? This isn't about the toast. And you know it. He turned to my mother. Last card. Final play. Jennifer, you're going to let him do this to me. My mother looked up from the table, and for the first time in 33 years of marriage, in a lifetime of practiced silence, she spoke. You did this, Victor. Not him. 7 words. Quiet. Almost gentle, but they landed like a door closing. My father's face did something I'd never seen before. It crumbled. Not into tears. Victor Gold didn't cry, but into a kind of blankness. The look of a man who's run out of people to blame. I picked up my bag. Sarah was by the door with my coat. Goodbye, Dad, I said. He didn't respond. I walked out of the riverside with my hand in Sarah's. The February air was sharp and clean. I breathed it in. Deep. Full. Like I'd been underwater for 31 years and had just broken the surface. My hands were still shaking. This wasn't victory. This was grief wearing a different coat. But it was done. Monday came fast. Marcus's attorney, David Stein, was in the Gold and Shin office by 7:45 with a court order for a full forensic audit of the company's financial records. Conducted by an independent firm. Not me. My report was the catalyst, but the process had to be clean. I understood that. I wanted that. By Tuesday, word had traveled the way it always does in small communities. Through phone calls that start with "Did you hear?" and end with "I always thought something was off." Victor Gold was removed from the board of Riverside Country Club. Not suspended. Removed. 24 years of membership. Gone in a single vote. The man who bought rounds for the entire clubhouse couldn't get past the front gate. By Wednesday, 4 of the business contacts who'd sat at his carefully arranged tables had quietly severed ties. No public statements. Just unreturned phone calls. Canceled meetings. The slow, deliberate erasure that happens when people decide you're no longer worth the association. The news didn't make the paper. It didn't need to. In a community that size, the rehearsal dinner itself was the headline. 72 witnesses. That's 72 versions of the story spreading outward like ripples. My father called me 9 times that week. I didn't answer. Not once. The 10th call went to voicemail. I listened to it once. Benjamin, you need to fix this. Call me back. Now. Still giving orders. Even now. I deleted the voicemail. Set my phone face down on the counter. Sarah was making dinner. She looked over at me, but didn't ask who called. She didn't need to. The man who controlled every room he walked into couldn't get his own son to answer the phone. And for the first time in my life, that silence was mine to give, not as to take. The independent audit took 7 weeks. When the final report came in, it confirmed everything in my file. And then some. $743,000. That was the total siphoned through Shell LLCs over an 8-year period. Monthly transfers. Small enough to avoid automatic flags. Large enough to fund a lifestyle that wasn't Victor Gold's to fund. The lake house. The Porsche. The country club membership he no longer had. Marcus filed a civil lawsuit in March. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraud. Conversion of partnership assets. His attorney told Sarah's father, attorney to attorney, that a criminal referral to the state prosecutor's office was under consideration. My father hired a defense lawyer. A good one. But good lawyers cost money. And my father's liquid assets were frozen pending the outcome of the civil case. He burned through his personal savings in the first 3 months. By April, Gold and Shin Properties was suspended. Operations halted. Contracts voided. The 200 employees my father used to brag about were collecting unemployment. Then the lake house went up for sale. I saw the listing online. The same house where my father hosted 4th of July parties. Where he held court on the back deck with a drink in his hand, telling everyone within earshot how he'd built everything from nothing. Turns out a lot of that everything belonged to Marcus. Sarah showed me the listing one evening. I looked at it for 15 seconds, then closed the tab. You okay? She asked. I didn't do this to him, I said. He did this to himself. Sarah nodded. I know, but it still doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to. She was right. Justice isn't supposed to feel like celebration. It's supposed to feel like the weight of a door finally closing. Heavy. Final. Necessary. But the heaviest moment was still coming. It arrived 3 weeks later through a phone call I wasn't expecting. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe instinct. Maybe hope. Maybe just the fact that she'd never called me on a Sunday before. Sundays were Victor's day. Golf and silence. Benjamin. Her voice was different. Smaller. But somehow clearer. Like she'd finally taken something heavy off her chest. Hi, Mom. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. Then, I should have said something 33 years ago. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, leaned against the kitchen counter. The words I'd waited my entire life to hear. And they came wrapped in 33 years of regret. I saw what he did to you, she continued. Every time. And I told myself it was his way of caring. That's what I told myself because the alternative, admitting I'd let my son be hurt by his own father, was too much. Mom, let me finish. Please. Her voice cracked. What you did at that dinner. Standing up like that. I've never been that brave. Not once in my life. And watching you, it broke something open in me. I didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. What I said was, I love you, Mom. But love isn't enough. Not anymore. I need you to show me. She was quiet. Then, I started seeing someone. A therapist. Last week was my first session. I pressed my hand to my mouth. My eyes burned. That's a good start, Mom. We talked for 30 more minutes. Carefully. The way you walk across thin ice. Aware of every step. Aware it could crack. But moving forward. 2 days later, I received a text from my father. Just one. The last communication I'd ever get from Victor Gold. You chose a stranger over your own blood. I read it twice. Then I understood. Marcus Chun. His partner of 17 years. His friend. The man whose money he stole. My father still called him a stranger. Victor Gold didn't know what trust was. He only understood control. And when control was gone, he had nothing left. I deleted the text. And I didn't look back. 8 months after the rehearsal dinner, Sarah and I hosted our own celebration. Not at the riverside. Not at any venue. In Sarah's parents' backyard. 20 people. String lights from the hardware store. Burgers on the grill. A Bluetooth speaker playing a playlist we'd made together on a Saturday morning. No projector. No slideshow. No seating chart. My friends. James. Michael. The crew from the FBI unit. Sat on lawn chairs. Drank beer from bottles. Sarah's mom, Helen, brought her famous lemon bars. James gave a toast that was 4 sentences long and made everyone laugh. Real laughter. The kind that comes from the belly. Not from obligation. My mother came. She arrived early, carrying a dish she'd made herself. Something she hadn't done in years because my father always hired caterers. She was quieter than usual, careful with her words. But she was there, present, trying. My father was not invited. Halfway through the evening, the doorbell rang. A delivery. Flowers. A massive arrangement of white lilies with a card. I opened it. Ben, the most honest person I've ever known. Congratulations. Marcus and Evelyn Chun. I stood in the doorway holding that card for a long time. Sarah came up behind me. You okay? Yeah, I said. I spent 31 years trying to earn one word from my father. And here's Marcus Chun giving me something my dad never could. Sarah put her arm around me. Some people build. Some people take. You can't change which one your father chose to be. I pressed my face into her shoulder. And I cried. The first time since the rehearsal dinner. Real, messy tears. Not because I was sad exactly, but because something that had been locked tight for 31 years had finally opened. And everything inside needed somewhere to go. 20 people who actually wanted to be there. That's all I ever needed. People ask me if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret it every single day. But not for the reason you might think. I don't regret the truth. I don't regret standing up. I regret that my father put me in a position where I had to choose between loyalty and honesty. That choice should never have been mine to make. Let me be clear about something. I didn't project that document to get revenge. I didn't walk up there with a plan. My plan was Monday morning. Clean. Professional. Private. But when my father stood in front of 72 people I cared about and told them I was worthless, when he turned my rehearsal dinner into one last performance where he was the star and I was the punchline, something shifted. Not anger. Something deeper. The realization that if I sat down and swallowed this, I would swallow everything forever. I was tired of swallowing. The truth is, I'd been silent about 2 things. How my father treated me, and what my father had done to Marcus. And in that moment, I understood that the silence was the same. The silence about the abuse and the silence about the fraud came from the same place. Fear. Fear of losing a father who was never really mine to begin with. Silence isn't loyalty. Silence is complicity. I learned that at a rehearsal dinner while watching my mother fold her napkin and smile. If you're listening to this and something about it feels familiar, if you know what it's like to sit at a table and shrink yourself so someone else can feel big, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my place. But I will tell you this. Setting a boundary with your family doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love yourself enough to say, I won't accept this anymore. And sometimes that's the bravest sentence a person can speak. Here's where I am now. Sarah and I got married 2 months ago. Small ceremony. 30 guests. Every single one chosen by us. No one volunteered to take over the planning. No one needed to. My mother is still in therapy. We talk twice a week now. Sometimes 3 times. It's careful, those conversations. Like learning to walk again after a long time in a wheelchair. She's not the mother I needed when I was 7. But she's trying to be the mother I need now. And I'm learning to let her. Marcus's civil case is moving through the courts. I don't follow the details closely. I gave my deposition 2 months ago. Professional. Fact-based. No emotion. Just the numbers. The numbers are enough. Victor sold the lake house. I heard through a family friend that he's renting a condo on the east side of town. Alone. Jennifer moved in with her sister in May. My father hasn't contacted me since that text message. I don't expect him to. The man who spent 31 years controlling every conversation finally ran into one he couldn't manage. I'm not a hero. I need you to know that. I'm not some warrior who planned the perfect takedown. I'm a man who got pushed too far on the wrong night and happened to have the evidence to push back. That's the whole story. Some days I wake up and miss my father. Not the real one. The one I invented. The version who taught me to change a tire and meant it. The version who said proud and wasn't performing. That father never existed. But the grief is real. If you're reading this and you know what it's like to mourn someone who's still alive, I see you. And I hope you know you're allowed to grieve and move forward at the same time. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who finally told the truth. And the truth, it turns out, was enough. If Ben's story stayed with you, drop a comment. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and truth? Or just type, I choose me. That's enough. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe. I share stories like this every week. Real people, real moments, real boundaries. There's another one in the description. I think you'll feel it. I'll see you there.